But now I eat for nutrition, and I've made that decision, and I'm not going to go back. You know, maybe down the road. So I'm about 10 months into a ketogenic diet. So about 5 months on Ketovore, and about another 5 months now, going on 5 months on strict carnivore, and fairly strict carnivore, not as strict as somebody. I'm not just meat and salt and eggs, and I am doing the l.reuteri yogurt and the l.reuteri yogurt. Hello, my friends. I am officially down 50 pounds. Woohoo! So, from my last weigh-in, lost another 3 pounds, feeling good, and so on. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the mental shift, what it takes. I have people that I've introduced to the carnivore diet who are trying, and who are not just trying, they're doing it, but they struggle a little bit, fall back, that kind of thing, and that's fairly normal for most people, and I see it on the forums and so on and so forth. And I have been really good. I have not had a lot of cravings, mostly a little bit of psychological cravings, and that's about it. Nothing that would get me to do it. And my wife commented to me the other day, "You're such an inspiration because you've stuck to it so well," and so on and so forth. And that made me think, well, why is that? And why are some other people struggling more with cravings and things like that? And I think it's the mental shift. And that shift is important. It's a decision. You make a decision. I'm going to do this. And like I've said in my earlier videos, I woke up one morning and said, I'm sick of this aging shit. Okay? And I think that was the main mental shift right there. I've got to do this, or I'm going to become a decrepit old man. And I don't want to do that. So I am reversing my biological age. As I've said several times now, I feel 10 years younger. I am 67, and I'm doing things that I probably wouldn't be doing. We're putting together a horse arena for my beautiful wife, and I probably wouldn't have had the motivation to do that. I might have done it anyways, but it would have taken longer, and so on. And so I'm attributing that to the mental shift. And it really comes down to a decision. And I know it's not the same for everybody. It's not as easy for everybody. And it hasn't been easy for me. And I do admit, lately I've had more psychological cravings than I did in the beginning. Like the other day I was driving somewhere and I thought, we used to go to this Mexican restaurant and have a couple of beers and, eat some chips and salsa and order a nice Mexican meal. And I was driving into town and thinking, now, boy, that would be nice. And then I was like, what the heck am I thinking? And it was just sort of a momentary, it was a habitual thing. We used to do that often. And so, but that was it. There was no way I was going to give in to that, or, in the past when I felt like that, I would, I'd call my wife or text her and say, hey, you want to do Mexican tonight? Now, I've been to that restaurant since with friends for a birthday occasion, and they have a steak, and so I just ordered the steak. And I've been there twice now, and I ordered fajita meat without any of the veggies, nothing else, just the fajita meat, and it was delicious. And so there's things you can do. You can still go out, and do that. But I think one of the key things is that I have stopped looking at food as entertainment. Because I often see on the forums, oh, what do you do? I'm bored, just eating all this meat. It's like, well, get a hobby. I know that's kind of oversimplifies things because it's our culture. Our culture revolves around food being entertainment. You go out, you have a few drinks, you have a nice meal, and you visit with friends, family, or you go, dancing, or you go to a concert or whatever it is, food is always involved. And so food is part of the entertainment. And so I get it. That's a hard thing to give up, especially with all the peer pressure from all your friends and family and so on and so forth. But now I eat for nutrition, and I've made that decision, and I'm not going to go back. maybe down the road. So I'm about 10 months into a ketogenic diet. So about 5 months on Ketovore and about another 5 months now, going on 5 months on strict carnivore. And fairly strict carnivore, not as strict as somebody. I'm not just meat and salt and eggs, and I am doing the l.reuteri yogurt and the l.reuteri yogurt, and that seems to be helping with digestion. Everything isn't always peaches and cream either. I've had some issues with oxalate dumping appearing on my arms mostly, and then in a couple other little spots. So I have to clear something up. When I went on the Dave Mack program, a lot of people commented about how great my skin looked. And I think I did mention it in the comments, but probably not everybody read it. I said, well, my skin is better, but I think it's the resolution on the camera that made it look like it was, just pristine. And so it's not perfect, but it has been better. And then when you see the oxalate dumping spots on my arm, you go, what the heck's going on there? But it's a long time process. I'm 67 years old, and have eaten a carb-centric diet all my life, like most of the rest of us. And so I still have a little bit of inflammation in my knees and back, but it's gotten so much better. I've mentioned that many times. So it's worth it. I'm feeling better. I'm doing things that I wouldn't have had the energy or motivation to want to do. I would do them anyway sometimes at my age because I needed to get them done. We live on a farm. We have cows, horses, goats. We're going to be picking up some sheep soon. I have chickens, and I'm incubating chicken eggs and so on. And so going to ramp that up and start selling some eggs, and we'll be selling meat, the excess meat. People say, what are you getting all these cows for again? Why are you getting back into cows? Because I had gotten rid of them all, and then the prices went up, so I'm kind of kicking myself. But I said, well, I got to support this carnivore habit somehow. But we ran out of beef. We've always eaten our own raised beef, and we ran out. So we got some from our brother and sister-in-law, and that has run out, because now we're eating a lot more beef. And so we ended up buying a side of beef from some neighbors until our cows are ready to process. And then we'll process them and sell the excess to offset any costs. There's not really a whole lot of costs. Sometimes we have to buy hay in the winter, but that was when I was running more cows than my land would support during the winter. And now I'm trying to keep it down to where the land will support the cows even through winter. I'll still have hay on hand in case we get a heavy snow, but we hardly had any winter this year, just some cold weather, a very light dusting of snow once or twice, and then spring came early, and so on. So anyways, again, back to the mental shift. That's what it takes, folks. Make a decision. Make that decision. I guess maybe the younger you are, the harder it is. As I've gotten older, and I'm tired of the aging shit. It's like I got to do this, or I'm going to become a decrepit old man, and just chalk it up to aging like everybody else. And we don't have to, Maggie White, 82 or 83 years old, I believe. Man, she looks like she's, in her 50s, in my opinion. Some people say 60s, but color in her hair and everything. So I'm hoping the color will come back in my hair, but that's not a big deal if it doesn't. It's okay. But I'm starting to see some of my abs a little bit now. I do have some hanging skin. So I've been accused of using AI, and I have a virtual background. That's why it looks kind of funny. So I have a little bit of hanging skins still here and around my midsection more so. And I still have some fat around midsection. That's always the last to go. And so I have visceral fat that I want to get rid of. I know that I have around the midsection probably, and maybe in some other areas and things and so on. But it's working, friends. Carnivore does work, and you have to work through any issues. Like for me, I've had the oxalate dumping. It's taken longer to get rid of the stiffness in my knees that I would like, but I'm probably down from about an 8 to a 0.5 to 1 maybe. So that's a huge improvement. So I anticipate, so I'm 10 months in, so I anticipate within 2 years it should all be gone. My back pain is a lot less. I'm able to get out of bed without that soreness, that I had kind of thought, well, I'm just going to have to live with that until it gets too much, I guess, or something. But, and I've always, and I ate paleo for a number of years, and I've always tried to eat fairly clean, probably 80% of the time, but I had not made the connection that it was carbohydrates, And the other thing about that mental shift is you can do ketovore, and if it works for you, that's fantastic. But if you keep carbs in your diet, that's going to keep those neurons in your brain lit up that want to crave more of those, because all carbs turn to sugar eventually in the body. And so, again, make that mental shift, my friends. Make a decision. Everything starts with a decision, right? Think about it. It all starts with a decision. You can do that if you're thinking about this, but you're like, I don't want to give up this or that, The one thing I haven't given up is my coffee, but I drink decaf coffee, and it's not the caffeine. I did give it up for a week to see if that had something to do with the oxalate dumping, and it made no difference. About 2 weeks, just to see, and I love it. I love the taste of it. I put butter and a couple of eggs in there, and some creatine, and some MCT oil. Although I ran out of MCT oil, and I don't think I'm going to get more. I don't need it, so I just add a little bit more butter in there. I love it with eggs, and I use my Soleil water, or you can use some salt in there. The salt really brings out the coffee flavor. It's almost a nutty, chocolatey flavor to me, anyways. Your brain auto completes what it thinks is closest to that. So, anyways, my friends, I hope everybody is doing well. This is another quick update, and hit me up in the comments. Questions, comments, criticisms. It's all good, my friends. We're all in this thing together. I'm doing this in hopes to help and inspire others, do my little contribution. So, peace out, my friends.